Tap into a whole new world of financial possibilities. Genie, get it to get it.
People are the most important asset of an organization. A rumbling cliche that has been doing the rounds in the boardrooms. But to what extent do organizations really practice it? Are leaders really considering and treating people as their most important asset? Or is the reality a stark contrast? And most importantly, during a time that the economy is facing nothing short of a hailstorm of negative factors, what exactly is going on in the current Sri Lankan context? Are the leaders aware of the reality? Are you, as a business decision maker, an employee, truly aware of what's going on? To talk about some of those really pertinent issues, we have a vibrant personality joining us. He was the founder CEO of Enable, an IT company that went the distance and took the name Sri Lankan software to the world in a massive way. He's also an actor, no stranger to the silver screen and, in fact, even the movies. Today, however, he is the CEO of a production company, Kehelmala Productions. He's somebody who has many different perspectives, interesting viewpoints that one might choose to ignore and look the other way. He's not happy to do that. He likes to voice out his concerns where it matters. His TED Talk, an ounce of consciousness is worth a ton of creativity, indeed was well recognized worldwide. Today, we have with us, joining here in Bisnomics, in your weekend's most profitable 60 minutes, the vibrant, dynamic personality of Peter Almeida. Peter, absolute pleasure to have you, and it's indeed, for me as a presenter, a dream come true to have you in that seat today.
I say thank you very much. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here chatting to you.
Peter, now let's do a reality check. I know you're a big fan of the truth and the reality. Now, we had the East attacks happening in 2019, COVID-19 first wave, second wave, Delta. Now, when there finally seems to be a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, we are seeing a hailstorm of poor economic sensors and factors coming into play. We see the issue and the talks about the currency situation in the country, inflation, unemployment. What exactly is going on in the Emerald Isle? I would like to know your perspective.
Well, to say that we are facing an unprecedented crisis is not an understatement. But what worries me is that people in power, including the current governor of the central bank when he was the minister, he said, no, I don't see a crisis. You know, to have a crisis is something that unexpectedly is thrown upon you. That we can understand. But when you ignore the crisis,
when you deny it,
and deny it, that's a very dangerous place to be when the leadership of an organization or of your family even, and God forbid your country, if they don't accept that there is a crisis, then we are in real trouble. Now, to look at the crisis, now I don't want to talk about these economic numbers, Advocata and all these groups. They have many discussions. But let me say this, the poor of the real poor people of this country are in very bad shape. So are the lower middle class. I mean, the individual employees and self-employed are all devastated. Even those who had good jobs, the business threw them out of jobs. We can come to that later. So they are desperate. Cost of living has gone up tremendously.
Spiraled.
Now we are seeing queues for gas and PT and all sorts of things. Rice. Now there's a big hoo-ha now. They said we are going to put an army person there, I thought they'll bring the tanks out, man, and break these bloody mills and take the rice. Now you see it's a joke. One of the big rice mill owners, his name is...
They're calling the shots, yeah.
They're calling. He said, all right, try it. I don't blame him.
And he was confident when he said that, and it seems to be true.
I don't blame him. That's the way he runs it. But so that's one. Food. So we're going to have a food crisis. We're having a crisis of maintaining a livelihood, a decent standard of living. Farmers are facing a huge problem about this fertilizer. I mean, organic fertilizer, I'm all for it. But should it be phased in, all of that? at that level. Take our children, so-called future, the education, the online system is a total shambles because children can't relate to that. Their mental well-being and all sorts of issues, quite apart from the larger economic issues of, repaying debt and the import and export and all of that, the balance of payment, the reserve, all that. But I'm talking about the ordinary people of this country. They're facing a very, very difficult situation. It raises a question, who is in charge? That's the point. Leadership, man. Where is the leadership? I mean, you listen to the debates in Parliament, you would think that they are living in on another planet. I mean, this is a really serious situation. Now, just today, in the Economy Next, I saw an article, some guy who had been involved in the Argentine and Greece and all that crisis. He says Sri Lanka could well face a bad situation. So, I worry. I worry because when there is a crisis, the poorest of the poor are the ones who get hammered, man. And now those children, now they can't afford online education. No? Do you know, Tharindu, only 35% of our student population is getting an education.
Because since the COVID outbreak.
Yes, because they don't have data, they don't have connectivity, they don't have devices. And I can talk about the teachers, what they are going through, but maybe later on in our discussion we'll talk about that because, even today yesterday there was a demonstration. I mean, the teachers are the ones who produce the next generation of people, no? I mean, the desperate situation they are in. So, to your point, it's a very bad situation. I myself have not seen this before. Of course, during the war, the people in the north and east faced a much worse situation, without electricity and all of that. So, they have seen worse. They have seen worse, no kerosene, no fuel, no nothing, no food supply. So, parts of the country have seen worse situation. In the plantation sector, I have known of a time when there was famine, when people didn't have food. But very soon we might face quite a bad situation.
Not the picture is not as rosy as they paint.
Not at all, and that's what worries me. I mean, if somebody trying to paint a rosy picture, then you will never fix the problem because you're denying a problem exists. So it's a question of leadership, really, that I'm concerned.
Is it a case of people playing hot potatoes, where they inherit the problem and they just play with it and fulfilling their needs and they pass it on to the next?
More than that, Tharindu, I'm just thinking, is there a real leadership in this country that's really concerned about building a future for the people, rather than helping their cronies, their buddies and all that, So I spoke about education, health. Look at the health situation. Now, this is not the time when somebody has a monopoly on antigen test. How can that be? That one company has a monopoly on this, when this has to be broadly distributed, PCR and all of that. It's a mess, man. So the health system, thank God for our very dedicated doctors and nurses and the health system. Over the years, they have built a very resilient system. Otherwise, we would have faced a much worse situation.
Understood.
Doctors do not turn anyone away. If you go to the general hospital with COVID or whatever, they'll somehow take you. So, but these all can just very quickly, fall apart.
Understood.
But to your point, it's a lack of some leaders of this country being concerned not to fill their pockets and fill their positions with their relatives and friends and look after their own buddies, which is what's happening. So while this is going on, there are people who are making super profits. So there's a huge contradiction. So I don't think there's a leadership that's concerned about the well-being and the future of this country.
Sad state indeed.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, Peter, is in a sense, there is a crisis of leadership that we are facing. And I know that there is hardly any playbook for leaders to follow, saying this situation do this situation do that. But in your view, what are the fundamental mistakes that our leaders need to avoid, maybe from a business perspective, maybe from a political perspective? What are the fundamental mistakes they need to avoid in these situations?
More than mistakes, Tharindu, are they leaders? That's the first question. Are they truly leaders? But who are leaders? Leaders are not managers. Leaders are not bosses. Leaders are, in my books, leader is someone who is a leader, Tharindu. Someone who shows the way, especially at a difficult time. And leaders have followers. And followers must follow them freely, not because they are obliged to them, not because it's an employer-employee relationship, master-slave, supervisor-employee, not that. Follow freely. So to follow you freely, you must show the way, This is okay, we are in a difficult situation, but I show you the way.
There is hope.
There's hope, and
You instill hope.
Yeah, and you can look at opportunities. No, we will, so that's what, and at a difficult time you need leaders. So to show the way and for people to follow you freely, you must inspire them. We say Singaling Uddipane. I don't know the Tamil word. So are there leaders in this country today, anyone, name anyone, who is inspiring people? No. Politics, that's not leadership.
Even in companies, even in businesses.
I dare say, very few are showing leadership. I mean, I worked with lots of CEOs. I don't mean to run anyone down. Some of them have been great managers, but I have not seen a lot of them inspiring their team. Of course, there are some, not a lot. So you get that in any even in social organizations that I worked with recently, I found they are there.
They'll keep it going, they'll just survive.
Though they manage, they're managers, they're not leaders, they're not inspiring people at difficult times. So we don't have that in Sri Lanka. So if you have a good leaders, they'll get people together, they get a good team together, and then the people will realize. I'll give you some examples.
Please.
Decision making. Now, how did they decide to reduce the tax as this government came to power? What is the data they used? They said by reducing the tax rate, you will increase the tax net. Didn't happen. So what data were they relying on? Reduce VAT, reduce corporate tax. So we lost 680 billion rupees. Now, how was the decision made? Certainly not to help the poor of the country. And this is the time you need the rich to pay their fair share of taxes. Corporates, pay your tax. Otherwise, how can you sustain the people of this country? Healthcare, education, roads, all sorts of things.
And we didn't see a similar spending within the economy either. There was no boost in the spending within the country.
Nothing. No benefit came out of the tax cut. Now they all agree. Then, contradiction. Now, they said they'll stop imports. Few weeks later, cancelled. No, release karanda. Then, exchange rate. This goes on like this, They declare some rice, maximum retail price. What happened? Abandoned. How many gazettes have they issued over the last contradicting? One contradicts the other. Can you inspire faith in the people in the country, in you? When they can't even make simple decisions based on data, stick to it, stay the course. Correct course if you have to, of course, just because you made a decision, you don't have to hang on to it. But, use data, you make good decisions and then stay the course. But this contradiction, one law today, next thing tomorrow, and the scandal that's going on. Latest is Satosa scandal. Big drama. I mean, so you see, they are allowing, while there's a country situation, their cronies and friends to make huge amounts of money through corrupt deals. So then is that leadership? So I worry.
Peter, why do you think Sri Lanka has a dearth of leadership? Is it an issue with our education system? What's really going on?
Well, that's a tough one at the political level, But generally, I find that even in other organizations, to your question about leadership, yes, you see, one is we are not encouraged to think for ourselves, Tarindu. Our education system doesn't allow that, our schools don't allow that. Don't forget we are
do what you're told.
That's right. Don't forget we are a country with some Buddhist tradition. And the Kalama Sutra talks to you about critical thinking. You don't have to rely on Western thinkers to teach us that. Kalama Sutra, what does it say? Think for yourself, even if the parents tell you, adults tell you, even if religious books tell you, religious leaders tell you. And the Lord Buddha says, even if I tell you, think
for yourself.
Is it true for you? So how did we lose that tradition? Now parents decide for children. They don't even let them decide what clothes to wear. I don't know how your parents were. So, they come up, then in schools also, you're not allowed to question. Panditya vendepa,
Don't grow beyond your means.
So children don't choose the subjects they want. They don't choose the career.
And sometimes in sports, we see the team is playing, but the coach is screaming from the pavilion what to do.
Sometimes the parents also screaming near while the children are swimming, pinanda, and straight. So anyway, so no freedom to think and no curiosity. Because the education system doesn't allow you to give you a problem and say, make it a business. So curiosity is not there. So without curiosity and critical and free thinking, how can you talk of leadership? And most important, failure. You're not, failure is not accepted in schools and all that. You get 5 out of 10, they won't say, "Ari, pahak hari ne. Ituru papi hadamu heta." No, ayyo modaya. Palayam panthiyen pitipasata. Sit at the back of the class. And so, if you have a fear of failing, if you can't think for yourself, you don't have curiosity to find out what are the problems, how can you find solutions to it. Those are key qualities of becoming a leader who can inspire people.
Absolutely. Peter, we are going to come back to you on more insights. You are definitely opening our eyes into so many different dimensions that we need to think as well. And we will come back to you on more information on that. Stay tuned for this very insightful discussion. We will be back on the other side of this short break. This is Bisnomics. Welcome back to Bisnomics, your weekend's most profitable 60 minutes. We are in conversation with the vibrant personality of Peter de Almeida regarding multiple different aspects of the economy and the society in general. Peter, now, are we seeing a situation that the leaders have forgotten the most important element of leadership, which is the people? Because everyone says people first, but during the COVID-19 first wave, did we actually see this being practiced? In other words, let me ask the question in a different set of terms which you have been saying over a time. In an era where the world is pursuing so many creative strategies and creative concepts, etc., are we losing the sense of common consciousness?
I think so, Tarindu. And not only I think so, that's what is happening. On the one hand, you know, everybody was in a mighty hurry to throw people out of jobs, to cut salaries and all that. But you see, a number of companies have made super profits. Take our banks. Our banks have made mega profits, but they have not thrown people out of jobs. But there are others who quickly rushed in, threw them out of jobs, used the situation, got some of the trade unions also to agree. In certain cases, yes, but you should make sure that when the turnaround comes, quickly you restore status quo. They are not in a hurry to do that. But the fact that the first thing you thought of in the crisis is to throw people out of jobs, how cruel is that? They have their own lives, they have their children, they have their family, they have grandparents, they have sick people in their homes. I mean, I think, is this leadership? Do I need a leader? Can I be called a leader when the first sign of trouble I throw my team under the bus? Lower your expectations, make less profits. So this people before profit is just a myth.
Those smiling faces on the front page of annual reports.
I tell you. And then they go out and give big donations and, you know, show that they are given some packets of food to the poor, but their own people thrown out of jobs. But so, you know, I think, but there are, having said that, I'm sure there are few companies that were conscious, that, you know, said, no, nobody gets thrown out of jobs. We will protect our team. Let's see what happens. We lower profits might come down, but at least your team, your people are not thrown out of the streets, you know. So, but that is part of this system, Tarindu. It's part of the capitalist system. Because your shareholders don't care a damn about all of that. They only want profits at any cost. On a global scale, look at Amazon and all these guys. They have made tremendous profits. The billionaires have grown their wealth staggeringly by throwing people out of jobs. So on a global scale, and also in Sri Lanka, we saw that, you know, that they were ready to sacrifice people. You know, their biggest asset, they call in their annual reports.
Yes. But they're the worst treated.
Yeah, so that can't be true, no. Unless you're a fool, you're not going to throw out your best asset. So you can see the hypocrisy in all this, you know.
Peter, talking about hypocrisy. Now, one of the recent revelations was the Pandora Papers. Well, it clearly goes on to show around the world, not only in Asia, Africa, Europe, all included, and some of the personalities that were regarded as top leaders and epitome of leadership, how they have been hoarding wealth while the masses were suffering.
Yeah.
Even in countries like Africa, we know the level of poverty, the problems they have, but even so many African leaders have been implicated in this. Let's admit, there are Sri Lankan names in that list too.
Yeah.
But isn't this a sign, Peter, that the capitalist approach of the pursuit of wealth at any cost. The famous words of Milton Friedman, the business of business is business. Isn't this a sign that that statement, that pursuit is the wrong approach, and maybe a more socialist approach is needed towards business? Even in Sri Lanka, we say we are a socialist republic, Samajawadi Janraja, but do we really see that in practice?
Clearly not. But to your point about, were you surprised to see any of these names on that list? I don't think so. Because it has gone on for so long, you know, this whole thing about offshore money being transacted at that level. But it spread to a point, even, I think even Tendulkar's name was there. Am I correct?
Yes.
You see, I
Name
mean,
is implicated.
I mean, how much money do you need? Must it be on offshore? I mean, come on. I mean, that's the problem, this gross inequality in wealth distribution in the world and in Sri Lanka. Even in Sri Lanka, in the US, it's much worse. Income inequality, you know about the famous thing about the 0.1%,
Yes.
who own 80% of the wealth.
Correct. And who gets richer during crisis?
And their wealth increase has, staggering increase in wealth. In Sri Lanka now, I found out inequality, 20% own more than 50% of all income, household income. All household income, 50% goes to the 20%. The bottom 20% own only 5% of the total income. 20% hold more than 50, others 50. The bottom 10% own only 1.6% of the total income. So that's the income inequality. Poverty, we have lifted ourselves out of poverty somewhat, but income inequality is there. Now, the capitalists themselves are finding this to be a problem. Forget about socialism. Thomas Piketty, the famous economist who had written a fabulous book, hundreds of years of research. He said the very dangerous thing, you have to tax the wealth, not the income. Because income you can hide. So even the capitalist system is thinking this massive amount of wealth sitting there in these offshore accounts is not helping to grow the, he has a famous equation, R greater than G. Rate of return on your capital is greater than growth. So you can keep money without investing in growth. So it's, forget socialism. Even from a capitalist point of view, this has become a problem.
Peter, now, one might say, okay, what Peter is saying is right, but at the end of the day, as a CEO, as a business leader, you know, I understand that people are important, but I also need to run my business because some of these CEOs, they also have boards to report to.
Yes.
And when the numbers don't really essentially add up, then they are under fire, they are under threat. They might say, I'm just, some of the CEOs, when you ask them, how come you laid off so many people? They say, I'm doing my job. This is what been kind of told to do during tough times. This is like the blueprint that is being given to me. How do business leaders relook at their business strategies during these times of uncertainty? Because you've led tech organizations, you've built it from ground up, you've seen a small startup going on to being somewhat of a giant in the tech sector, and probably you've also overseen it during some of the tough times like the GFC, the global financial crisis in 2008 and so on. What is Peter's way in these tough times?
See, it's not so much my way. What is the right thing to do? What is the right thing to do? I mean, how do we come to this place where we think that the first thing you have to do is to lay off people? Where did that come from? You know, in Japan and all that, those days, remember, employment forever.
They never leave.
They never leave. They never leave. But of course, if someone is not performing, then you must have a discussion and let them go. That's not the point. Retrenchment, it's a very recent phenomenon.
They also call it restructuring.
Restructuring, all kinds of names. So that's the bitter truth about this system. It's ruthless. They talk about capitalism, the engine of growth, all that. It's a ruthless system. Forget about people, not forget about. What about the planet? So,
Peter, they say, as of the recent research reports, the lungs of the planet, Amazon, has gone beyond the point of no return.
There you go.
And that in another 10 years' time, Amazon will end up as a savanna.
Yeah. So you see, so my point is, people, one, they don't even care about the destruction that they're causing to the entire ecosystem. Like, even these viruses and all are coming because of the amount we are destroying our ecosystem.
The more forest that gets damaged and destroyed, these exotic animals come out, they get hunted and end up in the wet markets, and the cycle begins.
That's right, that's right. So you see, Tarindu, this system cannot sustain life in planet anymore. That's the sad thing. They're all holding out capitalism as a great thing. What is the alternative? Socialism is not the alternative, and they take examples of Russia and all that. That's not the point. The point is we are destroying our earth, our means of life, our life on planet is being taken away, and so you're surprised that they are ready to sack their people and throw them out of jobs. You see, so I see that is the nature. But now there are companies like Enable. We would never do that. I left just before COVID. But they didn't sack anyone, and there are a number of companies like that. I'm not saying we are the only ones. So there are companies that don't necessarily jump at that. So it's a question of how do you look at, what does it mean to do business today? What does it mean? Do you sustain your people, your planet, or you destroy everything because you're showing a return to the shareholder and you get a big fat bonus for that? So it's a choice. So, yeah.
Peter, now, you have also been critical of some of the modern accounting practices we see. In fact, you believe that accounting is somewhat broken to a certain extent. Is the traditional accounting, the traditional way of measuring assets and liabilities and the profitability, do you think that that system is unfit and we need a new, more conscious way of accounting in business?
Well, more than conscious, it's more, let me start with, it's not what I'm saying, it's what I've learned and I've seen for myself. You see, in fact, there's a famous book called The End of Accounting. I forget the author. I spoke about it at the SEMA conference. You see, the thing is, this balance sheet, we are focused entirely on earnings. It's not what I am saying. It's a well-known fact in accounting, in finance, that focusing only on earnings will invariably destroy long-term shareholder value. And yet companies do that. What is they're missing is value. How do I create value? Value creation. They're only focused on earnings, like you said a little while ago. So critical things don't get onto your balance sheet, like data. Doesn't get onto your balance sheet. So that's a different discussion, maybe not at this session. But the point is, just on that one point,
yes,
our archaic system of earnings reporting, the way we report, and our balance sheet is clearly out of date because it's not capturing value of your assets to start with. People, data. Now, data is a huge asset. Who is monetizing data? Companies like Facebook, Amazon, Google. They monetize data. That's why WhatsApp, to talk specific example, WhatsApp was bought for almost $15 billion. 19. How many people did they have? 50 employees. What was the revenue? Zero. So on zero revenue, how much profit can you make? Zero. Who is the idiot? What is the balance sheet that they used? If you went to a banker, they'll say, Monopiece was the maker. I won't pay him $2 bloody for this.
Yeah.
16 billion. Why? What was the asset?
The data.
Yes, coming out of 500 million people on their platform. They had 500 million people. Some smart company knows, I know how to monetize this, how to get value out of this, how I can get global dominance. That's not in your balance sheet, that's not on your P&L, that's not on your cash flow. So just leave it at that for the time being. That's what I meant saying. Our accounting system is all broken,
And our balance sheets can hardly show intangible assets unless there has been acquisition or something. You don't even show some of the values of the brands that you have. The accounting systems and the standards don't allow for that.
Absolutely.
Unless you bought over another company, which you can then show under intangible assets. Right. Otherwise, no. I mean, there are some companies, Peter, some of these top internet giants, their brand value is more than the Sri Lankan GDP.
There, you said it, Tarin. You said it. Now you answered your own question.
Stay tuned. We will be back after this short break. This is Bisnomics.
Tap into a whole new world of financial possibilities. Genie, get it to get it.
Welcome back to Bisnomics, your weekend's most profitable 60 minutes. We are in conversation with the vibrant, dynamic personality of Peter de Almeida regarding many different facets of the economy and the society, which is of importance to any business decision maker or a citizen of the country. Peter, let's shift our focus towards startups. Now, you've been a part of a startup. You started a very successful startup, Enable, which you grew to tremendous heights, and it went on to become one of the best digital transformation companies involving so many infrastructure projects, software aspects, the entire digital transformation. But important thing is you grew it from the startup to the level of a successful mid-sized organization, and it keeps growing. So you've seen the growth, you know the secret behind the success of such operations. For anyone who is planning to go ahead with a startup, what is your advice to them?
Okay, I mean, I don't seem to sound advice, but I'll share from my experience. I don't want to, different people have different experiences, but in my case, what I'm saying is there a unique opportunity that you want to go after? You see, the thing about starting up something is what is the problem or the opportunity that you're addressing? You have to have a very clear idea about that. I'm going to fix this problem, or I'm going to go after this opportunity which has not been captured. So you have to have a very clear idea.
The blue ocean.
Yeah, whatever, but you have a clear idea about what you're going to do. But now I'm also beginning to think if it's also good if you have a purpose. You must ask yourself, why am I starting? What is the core reason for my existence? I'm learning that now. Although at Enable, we also had a very core purpose of enabling technology. That's why I use the word enable. Enable technology to do better business. Don't go and sell technology to the IT department, but sell it to the business. And you should be able to articulate very clearly, here is how it's going to change your business. So, I think the important thing is to have a very clear idea. Are you solving a problem, or are you exploiting an opportunity to create new experiences for people? Okay, experiences. So you either, because I heard from Udita Liyanage, famous man, he passed away.
The former director of the Postgraduate
That's
Institute
right.
of Management.
He was marketing, fundamentals of marketing in 1980s. Or early 80s, he taught me. He said people buy only two things. And it's good for startups to remember that. People buy only two things, whatever they buy. They buy solutions to problem or good feelings. Now, if I have a nice Mont Blanc pen, that's not a solution to a problem. I can write the ballpoint pen, but that gives me good feelings. You get it? So either you are fixing a problem or you're creating a new experience, good feelings. So a startup needs to be very clear about that. Secondly, they should be able to find the resources, the key resources that are important. Now, we started with 12 people, but they were the best, what we thought were the best. So 12 grew to almost 200 people at one time. So find the right resources, not too many, who are the critical pivotal resources I need to get the job done. Set your expectations a little low so that you are not under pressure from day one, right? And then nothing but hard work. If you think I'm going to, some people ask, I want to make $1 million when I'm 20 years old. That's all crap, Darindu. You have to put in the hard work. You have to really put in the hard work, long hours, and adaptability. Sometimes you're going in a direction like Enable. We were going in a direction. Unfortunately, because of the global crisis, one of our top customers on whom we were betting for a $3-4 million deal they didn't go out of business. Their profitability went from 10 billion to zero. Next year, they went to 10 billion loss. We were able to adapt and go after new technologies that we found were very relevant to our customers to fix some of their burning issues. So,
Peter, you remind me of the famous statement by the father of evolution, who said it's not the fastest, not the strongest, not the smartest, but the one that is most adaptable to change.
Right. So we were on the threshold of going down, going under.
Yes.
But we lowered expectation, tightened our belts, and we were able to pull through. So I'm saying the most important thing is, can you spot opportunities? A good entrepreneur or a startup, what are the opportunities that I can go after?
They need to be persistent as well.
Persistent and differentiate. If you are doing something that 10 other people are doing, you will be okay, but you're not going to make a big change. You're not going to be, create value.
You're going to be there, you'll be there.
You're going to be there. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. And can I differentiate? Can I do it better than anyone else in the market today? Cheaper, better, whatever that differentiation is, you have to look for the differentiation.
Not just do it for the trend or for the fashion of it.
Absolutely.
Peter, now, you've also been having a very interesting career in drama. And I must say that I remember as a child seeing you acting the role of the obedient son, yet also being a loyal husband in Gireya. So I remember
1991.
I remember that. Now, how has drama and theatre shaped your corporate life?
Well, I've been asked this before. I don't know if it shaped my corporate life, but one of the things that you need to do in business or in anything, you have to be able to tell a story, no, Tarindu? So either you have to tell a story to your shareholders, you have to be able to tell a story to your customers, you have to tell a story to your employees to hire them. So I think I was able to tell a story of value, a story that might inspire people to come in. I mean, Enable was a startup, no, but we got some of the finest engineers coming out of Morotwe and other universities joining us because we were able to tell them this is what we are trying to do. And even customers. we were able to convincingly tell them. Most importantly, I was able to tell a decent story to the shareholders to put money into our business, particularly in a difficult time.
Like of the GFC.
Yes. So you see, so you have to be able to go and tell them, look. So I think my theatre background enabled me to be a storyteller, not baila. You know, no. That to be credible, authentic,
there has to be
believable,
substance.
believable stories, and be able to convince them. Okay, you know, let's put some money into this fellow's business, or let's buy this product from him, or let's join his company, or whatever.
You can have the best plan, but if it's not well communicated,
that's right. That's
no one's
right.
putting their money behind it.
You know, tell us in a few words what is it that you're trying to do for us. You know? Yeah.
So, Peter, I believe that this also has got something to do with the current work you do. You are heading a production company. Tell us more about that. Tell us how you see an opportunity for storytelling in Sri Lanka.
Right. Now, that's exactly what Kehelmala Productions is about. In fact, our purpose is to inspire and sustain audiences through creative storytelling that pushes past the boundaries and embraces diversity. That's our purpose. So, what we're trying to, you see, in Sri Lanka, there are lots of young, talented people. And we have great stories to tell, but most of them, because you can't make a livelihood doing creative work. Correct. So they are creative, but they'll go and work at a bank or a corporate or, you know, some place, and they'll do their creativity only when they have time. We are trying to create a model where we are trying to hire people, young people, full time, pay them a salary, pay them EPF,
professional
EPF
actors.
And all that. No, writers,
story
writers, firstly, and then maybe directors, others, you know, create a model where we can show people that, look, there is a livelihood in this. Now, there's a 23-year-old guy who is in our company. His parents want him to do business management. He's a storyteller. He has written a fabulous script for a movie. Now, if he didn't have this company, he'd have chuck it up and go and do his business marketing, which he hates. But now, we can't pay him a big salary. But suppose if we can get his script produced, make a movie, suppose he gets picked up by Netflix. So you see, so that's...
And we see today one of the most popular stories, Squid Game.
Yeah.
You know, it's having millions of viewers around the world.
That's right.
Initially rejected by so many houses, but see where it has gone
That's
today.
right. And you see, you can create something. Now, Yohani also is a fabulous example of, you know, one song, maybe not consistent, but I'm hoping she would be. But you see, it can catch a huge audience, 130 million views. So, if you can... Then we can, if that money comes, we can sustain more and more.
And if we are able to have something of that nature, that scope, we have a ready market in India, which is a massive market. We don't have to go to the world even.
That's my point.
The second, I believe, the second biggest populous nation in the world is right next door.
There you are. We have a lot of similarities. Tamil, if you can do good Tamil content, South India, you know, it's a big audience. So we are trying, but also in our storytelling, we also want to create some amount of social consciousness. All our stories won't have a deep social message, but we also want to make sure that we tell those stories that are also important stories to be told, particularly as we discussed earlier, the world and the planet and the people face a devastating and a very bleak future. So we don't want to be only telling stories that are, you know, frivolous and, but we can use even comedy.
Absolutely.
That's not the point, but we want to tell the important stories.
Peter,
that also raise people's consciousness.
For sure. Peter, on a final note, you as a social worker, you have been involved with at the grassroots level with those people who are facing many misfortunes and which have kind of got quadrupled due to the COVID-19 situation, lockdowns, and especially we have more than 40% of the workforce in Sri Lanka who are dependent on a daily wage. All these cleaners, the ones who are dependent on the tuk-tuks, etc. Peter, in your perspective, what are the core social and economic issues that these daily wage earners, these people at the grassroots levels are facing, and what can we do to address that?
I think right now they need to be given some kind of income, state-provided income. Without that, it's not easy for them to come out of this system, you know. And we don't have the money because we are spending on all kinds of other fancy stuff. Now, even as we speak, they were trying to build a walkway in Polonnaruwa. I mean, we must have got our priorities all wrong, no? I mean, can you imagine, with the curfew, the bulldozers are breaking and they are making a walkway. And you know, and if you
it's
can
all superficial, isn't it?
Yes, and if you can increase the tax, and the super rich have to be taxed. The corporates must pay their fair shank. Banks have doubled their profit in the first 6 months than their profits they made last year. Can't they lower their profits a little bit? Can't they pay more taxes? And we have to provide a safety net for these people. The state must intervene to provide them with some income, a basic income, which is not a bad idea even from a capitalist economy point of view, because you tell them they will start spending. Correct. And they'll kickstart the economy. So it's not a socialist thing. It's a capitalist thing even, because without that safety net, without holding them together at a time like this, without a basic income, they gave
the same Keynesian policy of economics. You give them money. If they have money at hand, they will spend.
That's right. And and this thing about, oh, you give them money, they'll always be beggars. No, I don't buy that. Nobody, because people like to live lives of dignity, and I don't think they all want to be.
No one is proud to beg.
Yeah. So I think that's a myth. I don't think globally it's proven to be wrong. So I think, without a welfare, without a handout, without, it'll be very difficult to pull these people out of this misery. And will the government do it? I doubt it.
Peter, finally, 2 minutes of advice for the youth of this country, because they are our hope, they are the future. What attitudes do you like to see in them as they enter the workforce and take over this country? Because we see record numbers of people trying to leave Sri Lanka. The applications for migrating to Canada, Australia, Europe is at an all-time high, I believe. What hope do we have for the Sri Lanka if the youth also begins to leave? And what is your advice to the younger generation of this country?
I don't think I'd like to give advice to anybody, Tarindu, but I'll only say this. Try to be conscious of the large issues facing the people of this country. Now I'm involved with my schools in Benedict's College to create a roadmap, a different strategy for the future. You know our purpose? 4 things. Create hope and opportunity for people to live lives with dignity and freedom. That's the purpose of education that's in Benedict's. So my point is, I think we have to inculcate this social consciousness in our people. They cannot leave it to the governments to solve our problems. We need to be conscious, then we can form movements. Like the teachers have come together. They are on the streets. What a sad situation is that. A principal leaves, a grade 1 principal leaves with a salary of 60,000 rupees. So if there's consciousness, then we will try to do something about some of the larger issues facing the people of this country, even as a career. What problems would you like to be solving? And have a consciousness of the larger issues facing our people and our planet. So my thing to students is, while they may be successful trying to make money and all that, your life is not worth it. If you're 30 seconds, I always in my TED talk also, I say 30 seconds left to think about your life, what will you think of? Not all the riches you made. I won't think of this interview as, as much as I enjoy talking to you, but if I've contributed in some way to address one of the many inequalities faced by the people of this country, then you can say, my life was well lived and my life was worth it. So I would say, the younger people, be conscious of what's happening and see whether you can play a small part in making this world a slightly better place.
Peter D. Almeida, inspiring as always to listen to you. Thank you for what you're doing, especially to instill hope and inspiration among the younger generations of this country, and wish you good luck with all your future endeavors. It was an absolute honor and pleasure to hear from a world-class Sri Lankan like you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Tarindu, and good luck and all the best with the work that you are doing.
No matter what industry you may be in, no matter what business you may be in, whether you are a leader or whether you are a new entrant to the economic activities of Sri Lanka, you need to act with consciousness, because end of the day, when you have 30 seconds to go, what will fulfill you, what will come into your mind is the contribution. And if you can say, I have lived a life in which I have contributed towards making the world a better place, what more than that would you really want in those 30 seconds? I'm Tarindu Amarasekara, and no matter what business you may be in, have a great week ahead and act with conscience. I will see you with the next episode. This is Bisnomics.
Tap into a whole new world of financial possibilities. Genie, get it to get it.